who did God create me to be? What gifts did he send me to this earth with that I have a responsibility to first discover and then share with others, because that's how we connect. That's how we bless each other's lives. That's what we're here to do, is discover and then lean into those gifts.
Well, hello again, prosperity seeker and obedient rebel. Welcome to another episode of the Prosperity Approach with your resident obedient rebel, Allyson Chavez. Thank you so much. I just feel such great honor and humility and gratitude for you tuning into this, whether it's on your favorite podcasting platform or you're watching this on YouTube. I just am so grateful to have you in my world, and hope that I am being a positive influence in your world. And I know you're going to love today's episode because of the amazing woman that we have today and the topic that we're going to talk about today, which I am so excited. We're going to talk about the incredible myth that authenticity is. And this is such a juicy topic because it's such a huge buzzword these days, but like, what does that even mean? And today's guest is going to break it all down for us, and we're going to have the most amazing conversation. But let me introduce you to her first. Our guest today is Cheryl Knowlton. She's CSP, which stands for Certified Speaking Professional. She's a dynamic keynote speaker, which you are going to get from our interview today. She's an author and CEO of Dynamite Productions. With over 25 years of experience in the real estate industry, Cheryl specializes in activating authenticity in leaders and teams, helping them elevate their performance and achieve extraordinary results. She's also a certified Enneagram coach, Fascinate certified advisor, and ICF certified coach, blending personality insights with actionable strategies to inspire her audiences. Cheryl is also the author of The 25 Biggest Mistakes Speakers Make and How to Avoid Them, and is currently working on her highly anticipated book, The Authenticity Myth: What Leaders Get Wrong and How to Get It Right. Oh, I can't wait for that book to come out. When she's not empowering others, Cheryl loves skiing, running marathons, and exploring all things Disney. Her tagline says it all: I ignite elevated performance. Welcome, Cheryl. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for being on the Prosperity Approach today.
Thank you so much, Allyson, for having me. And I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, we are going to have such a great conversation. So let's talk about the authenticity myth. When you said that before we started recording, like immediately I was like, yes, this is what we need to talk about. So in fact, I have goosebumps. Somebody needs this really, really badly right now. Maybe it's me. So tell me what it's all about. Like, how did you come onto it? Like,
I love it. So as you mentioned in reading my bio, that I'm certified in all of these things. What we couldn't fit into a short bio is why I am so obsessed with the study of personality, and yes, collecting certifications like other people collect movie posters. It's a thing. And I was adopted at birth, and not knowing anything about my birth parents, who they were, where they were. I grew up as an only child, and for 4.5 glorious years, life was perfect and amazing and wonderful because my adoptive parents were such incredibly beautiful humans, and they cherished me as their only child, and life was really absolutely magnificent. And then life is what happens when we're busy making other plans, right?
Yep.
Recognizing the divine source and the author of those plans is the only way that most of us can get through the things that actually happen. Mm-hmm. One day, my beautiful angel mother got very, very sick. And when my dad got home from work, we drove her to the hospital in the rain, and she never came home. An undiagnosed brain tumor had spread and metastasized absolutely everywhere. And in 1973, they did absolutely everything they could. And my angel mother became one herself. My poor dad, he was beside himself, didn't know what to do. This was not what he had signed up for in life. And he started dating right away and trying to cope with his grief. And he married a woman who forgot to announce until after the nuptials that she detests children.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So, and in my dad's family, that generation, you're married to Hannibal Lecter. I'm so sorry. You kids will work it out. Divorce was not an option.
Mhm.
And so he did everything he could to try to work it out, which led me to living with another family for 9.5 years.
Oh my goodness.
I,
And
I,
you were what, 4.5 when your mother passed away?
yes, and I was 6.5 when my dad remarried,
Okay.
and yeah, and so my first missionary was a 6-year-old girl named Laura. And she was just a few years or a few weeks younger, a few weeks younger than I was. And so we were very, very close in age. And she taught me the words to a primary hymn called I'm a Child of God. And that, as two little 6-year-olds playing in the bedroom with the door closed, and she taught me that song, it seared through every cell in my body, Allyson. I did not know who my birth mother was or where she was. I didn't know where my angel mother was. I knew that she was with Jesus, and that sounded great because my mother had taught me that Jesus loves me and that she was somewhere in the stars. But getting that first really truly deep knowing became a stake in the ground for my identity, which was tempest tossed as I went from being an only child to now having a stepmother to now living with this other family during the week and on weekends. And now I'm a middle child and having different rules, different expectations, a different identity, if you will, that went along with those expectations in that role. And it was how I was introduced to the gospel of Jesus Christ, because my parents were Congregationalists, and my first missionary started teaching me the gospel with a beautiful primary hymn. And as a result of all of this, my dad took early retirement from working for the federal government his entire career as a petroleum engineer. And I got to come home. Now life was very different. And I feel like for my personality, I was on pause from the time I was 6.5 to the time I was 15.5. And then I got to fully be self-expressed again. So a lot of times people think that authenticity is I get to say whatever I want, whenever I want, and it doesn't matter if anyone's hurt or there are consequences. That is not authenticity. That's part of the authenticity myth from a leadership standpoint and a personal leadership standpoint. But that's why I, as an adult, have become so obsessed with the study of personality, and figuring out who I am. Who did God create me to be? What gifts did he send me to this earth with that I have a responsibility to first discover and then share with others? Because that's how we connect. That's how we bless each other's lives. That's what we're here to do, is discover and then lean into those gifts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you and I share the same religious affiliation as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I'm actually I hope this is okay, to put the lyrics to I Am a Child of God. I'll put those in the show notes. I think it's okay to do that. And we'll give credit for who wrote it, but it's
Yes,
an amazing,
mm-hmm.
it's an amazing song. And I really appreciate this conversation, like right out the gate, talking about our identity as children of God. Because and in fact, you said, can we get spiritual before we started recording? And I'm like, oh, please, let's go right there. This is for faith-based people, because more now than ever in the history of the world, I think we need to be having that conversation about who am I and where did I come from and where am I going? And is there a God, and does God love me? Or is he waiting for me just to make the slightest mistake so he can crush me? Which I think a lot of people people have that teaching, that false teaching about who and
The
what
Old Testament
is.
version of God.
Yes, the
fire and
angry God.
brimstone.
Yes, the sinners in the hands of an angry God kind of God. And so I really love this, because where foundation is crumbling, society is crumbling. I appreciate what you said about authenticity, and people think it means that they can be crass and they can be obnoxious and they can hurt other people. And they're like, well, I'm just speaking my truth,
Right.
deal with it. And that's not authentic. So tell me what the identity and authenticity really means to you, since you have spent your life pretty much immersed in identity and who are you?
You're so cute. I'm still on this journey, and you asked how the authenticity myth came to be. So the study of personality and getting certified in all of these different modalities, the Enneagram really stood out. My having found both of my birth parents and meeting my biological family on both sides. It's a whole nother story for another day.
Wow, I'll have to have you back.
Yes, I met my biological sister Michelle, and in September of 2019, I was in Dallas, Texas. I was speaking at a conference, and knowing that I was going to be coming into town and knowing that she lived just a handful of miles away, I rented a car and planned to stay later. After I was done with my speaking engagement, drove to her house. She very graciously was making dinner. And as she's making dinner and I'm standing there with absolutely nothing to do, and she assured me she didn't need my help, she looked up at me and she said, "So have you taken that Enneagram test yet?" And she had said, and we both love the study of personality, and her growing up as the oldest and then finding out that she wasn't the oldest when she was a teenager, when my mother told her about me. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Oh,
just
wow.
recognizing all of those dynamics and her role in the family and all of that. So she'd sent me this thing called the Enneagram, and at that point I had never heard of it. And now I have no excuse because she's making dinner for me and I'm standing there in her kitchen. So she's like, perfect. So she pulls it up on her phone. She hands it to me, and I answer the questions as honestly as I possibly can. And I'll send you the link to that original assessment that I took. It's completely free of charge, available on the internet. They don't sell your information.
Oh, beautiful.
And I took it, and it spits out this result that I'm a 3. So she said, "What does it say?" As she's stirring the spaghetti. "What is it?" And I said, "It says I'm a 3. I have no idea what that even means." "Oh, I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it." And I'm like, what are you talking about? What did you know? And so that she introduced me to a book, a Christian based book, called The Road Back to You. And I bought it on Audible. I listened to it on my drive all the way back to the airport. I listened to it on the entire flight home with tears streaming down my face, because it's a very God-centered, Christian-centered approach to self-discovery and who we are and what drives and motivates us to do what we do. And the first thing I learned as I was being trained in the Enneagram is no one can tell you what your number is. And so anybody who is, acting like a fortune teller, come closer and into my tent and I will tell you, I will read the tea leaves. That's a bunch of nonsense. No one can tell you what your number is, because only we know what our true motives are, and our core motivation, our core desire, our core fear, and our core longing, and what we long to hear Christ say to us. And it usually stems out of something that happened in childhood. And I shared some of my most significant earthquakes in my childhood that really disrupted the landscape of my life.
Yeah.
I've never said that before. I quite like that. I might have to write that down.
I think you need to.
Earthquakes that disrupted the landscape of our lives. What's really beautiful about all of us as humans is that every one of us has gone through something that we, like my dad, found ourselves in the face of, that we didn't sign up for and that we didn't want. And a trial, a challenge, a loss of a loved one, or a pet, or an unwanted move, or a move of a best friend. There are so many things, and not to even mention diagnosis and natural disasters that are just part of our lives, and our pain points can be real teachers for us in terms of identity and who we are and how we show up in the world. And and how we handle it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when you said that nobody can tell you what your Enneagram is, but your sister was like, I knew it. How, like, what was that like?
It was fun and exciting and terrifying all at the same time for someone that I was biologically connected to, but I haven't known my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
She's younger than I am. I haven't known her whole life. It was beautiful and exciting to be seen and recognized and known in that way. And what she was saying was, I really suspected that you're a 3. And also a huge curiosity gap of, what does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
Which led to that first book, The Road Back to You, which was the first of probably 20 different books on the Enneagram. And the cool thing about it is that there are 2 very, very differing schools of thought, and then there's an intersection. So think of them as 2 separate, we're being videoed, 2 separate highways. Mm-hmm. And there is an intersection. There is that 4-way intersection in the middle of the very psychological PhD approach through that lens of personality and psychosis and healthy and unhealthy and the behaviors, and recognizing that of all 9 types, all 9 have unhealthy behaviors that will land all 9 types in prison if we're not careful. So that was a huge awareness point for me when I read that particular book, having read 20 of them. And then there's the very Christian approach to the Enneagram. So we have the very psychological PhD approach and the very Christian approach. And there is an intersection of the psychological and the Christian approach, which I really love. And so my big awareness about myself is that I want another Enneagram certification. And the very second that I can afford it, I will be signing up for that program because it's deeper and it's the best intersection of both that I have found. And that particular Enneagram assessment is not free. It's like $60. It's the best $60 I've ever spent because it goes through identification of type, which is the first thing, then the wing, which will not make any sense to anybody who can't see the actual Enneagram symbol, but we wing to our next door neighbor. As a 3, I can wing to a 2 on one side, or I can wing 4 on the other. And I'm trying to do that backwards so that your audience can see that, but we don't wing across. We only wing next door. And that was very helpful for me to recognize that the best way to describe that is that we each, most of us, not all of us, but most of us were born with 2 arms and 2 hands. And most of us have a dominant hand. And that is the way that we wing typically, which will give us different insights into our personality and the way we normally show up and the way we normally think, act, and behave versus our non-dominant hand. And so we can pull in those strengths, just like a bird uses both wings. We can pull in those strengths, and to do that intentionally is really cool. And then there's a path to healing, which does cross. So it's very, very cool. And the more I get into it, the more obsessed I become in learning about myself and why in the heck do I do what I do?
And isn't that fascinating? Because, we've heard that our most favorite topic is ourselves.
Yeah.
And it sounds selfish and it sounds like we're completely self-absorbed. But if we'll take the shame of that away and just own that, we realize, gosh, I really don't know a whole lot about me. I really don't know what makes me tick. I don't really know why I do what I do. And people are on this huge search. I mean, my goodness, the last 4 years have been rough with identity and crazy talk about who you really are and what you identify as or who you identify as. Or there's just so much evil and so much confusion intentionally dumped into the world, because if you don't know who you are, you're very easily controlled. Very, very easily controlled. But I do want to ask you a question. Does the Enneagram, we talked before we started recording about we're really, really good about putting on masks. Like we're instead of being authentic, we're just really good about putting on the masks. So
Yeah.
I would love to hear your take on that. And also, does the Enneagram help you feel safe in taking off the mask?
Absolutely. The Enneagram has taught me what my mask is. And what I do when as a three, the achiever of who I try to project myself as on in relationship, in social media, in my work relationships with clients, like all of it. And that is that for a three, that is image. And being seen as not only image, like, hello, I need a fresh round of Botox, don't look too closely.
You're
um,
gorgeous.
which is part of it for me. And just taking, I'm getting tears in my eyes, taking a non-judgmental look at ourselves, a deep look at who we are and why we do what we do, and just the recognition and the ownership of my divine identity. And really the only way to take off the mask is to get very, very clear about divine identity. And you and I share those beliefs that, the prophet of our church in 2000, the year 2000, 25 years ago, made a proclamation to the world on the family. And in that, he talked about divine identity.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked at each other when that was given and we went, duh.
Yes, yes, we did. And for those who are not familiar with the family proclamation, the thing that we're going duh on is the divine roles of women and men in the home, and also that we have a divine, like we have a gender that we don't choose. Like we have always been this gender for, I mean, that is worded much more eloquently than that, but I had the same reaction. I was like, are you, well, of course this hello.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And here we are 25 years later with, as you mentioned, the world telling us all of these different ways to look at that. Um, I cannot help but think that that is absolutely the force of the adversary.
I agree.
Because if we cannot be at home, I'm wearing my Disney It's Good to Be Home
I was
today.
wondering if you were going to show that off, since you love all things Disney.
Knowing this is videoed, I have to show everybody what that actually is. If we cannot be safe and at home in our own skin when we are with ourselves 24/7, 365, 366 on leap years, what a horrible, horrible thing. What a discomforting, terrifying, uncomfortable thing. Can you imagine wearing shoes that were 3 sizes too small for you 24/7 and you cannot take them off? If we can't get clear about our identity, nothing else matters, because nothing else is clear. It's like looking through the world with glasses that are smeared with butter.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree. And it's not just it is at the very basic, which I know basic these days is a negative term, but as your foundation, you're a child of God.
Yes.
You're not God's, and I've said this before, but I'm going to correct myself. I've said before that you're God's crowning creation, but a creation is like a masterpiece that then you leave. You're not just God's greatest creation. You are his best idea. To quote one of my friends, Lisa Williams, you're God's best idea, and you're his child. And we don't ever just like leave our kids to figure, at least not us healthy adults don't just like leave their kids to like figure stuff out when they're 3. We are invested in their growth and in their health and in making their life better than our life was. And God's greatest glory is us becoming like him.
Yes.
And being able to receive all that he has. But if we don't even know who we are on a foundational, fundamental level, it's very, very hard for God to get in, because the voices are so loud and the noises are so loud in our ears and in our head.
Absolutely. They are. And so just for anyone listening who does not already know this, that the God that I believe in and that I believe Allyson believes in, where we share the same religious affiliation, that you are literally a child of God. As poets of old would say from my English study days, trailing clouds of glory. And you literally are his divine child. And just recognizing that gender and family and gender identity roles and all of that aside, just to come back to that foundational belief and recognition that you are literally a child of God, hopefully will be the stake in the ground for you that it was for me.
Yes. And it's like whether you have a church that or a congregation that you go to every week, if you have eschewed religion at all, if you didn't grow up religious, like we're not talking about religion, we're talking about relationship. We're talking about like start there. Start with I am a child of God. So what does that mean? And if I really am a child of God, then what does he want from me? If he loves me, what does he actually want from me? And I think because of decisions that we've made when we were very, very little about how life works for us and how others show up for us and our own worthiness and deservingness. We've unconsciously and also had people very intentionally pervert our relationship with God. And like, I'm not good enough yet. And as soon as I'm perfect, then I can ask for help. At least that's the program that I ran for a very, very long time. As soon as I don't sin, then I can ask for forgiveness, which is totally bizarre.
I'm done drowning, I'll ask for the life preserver.
Yes, as soon as I'm done drowning, and then we'll get it. Then we'll get it. But if you just start there, and to your point at the beginning of the conversation, none of us gets through this life unscathed. Every single one of us carried scars and wounds, deep, deep scars. We can't not. And you said pain points can be very, very deep teachers. And we can have that pain without that suffering. But a lot of times we have been taught, well, why me, God? Why this? Why did you take my angel mother? Like I was 4.5 years old. Why would you take her? How could she be more needed on the other side than a 4.5-year-old little girl needs her here? How could you do that? I lost my mom to suicide when I was 11. And so I understand deeply rejection, abandonment, but like all of those things also from my own perspective. But instead of asking why and blaming God and then hardening our hearts against his comfort and his healing and his grace and Christ's atonement and all of that, what I have sought to do is to ask, okay, what is this here for me? What am I to learn from this? How am I to grow from this? Because the event is just the event. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. But the way that I interpret the event will change the entire trajectory of my life.
Absolutely, the meaning we give to it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it feels very important for me to mention this as well. No matter what religion you are or are not, truth is truth regardless of where it comes from. This is why I didn't know we were going to explore Enneagrams today. So this is super, super fun because I don't know very much about it. So I'm really excited to go there and take my own test and all of that. And we'll have all the links and all the funsies in the show notes for everybody to go take your own test. But you didn't learn this at any church. And some people are like, well, if it doesn't come from the Bible or if it doesn't come from the Book of Mormon, then I can't learn it. But it's like, but math doesn't come from the Bible. Math is a truth. That's like God's a mathematician.
And I'm allergic to math. But yes, you're kind of right. We don't learn trigonometry in the Bible. And yet it is still true for those who understand it.
Yes. Yes. I was listening to somebody today, and I wish that I could remember who quoted this so that I could give them credit. But they said, if it lights up your mind and it settles your heart.
That
lights up your mind and settles your heart. Trust it.
I'm writing that down.
Move forward. And I will find who deserves credit for that quote, and I'll pop it in the show notes as well. But that is worth like making a vinyl cling and putting it on your wall, or making it a wallpaper on your phone, to just remind you that truth is to be found everywhere, inside religion, outside religion, and God is everywhere. And he is your father. He's your literal father, and he is in the details. God is in the details of every part of your life and your business and your family and your goals and your dreams, and all of that, and all of your weaknesses and sins notwithstanding. He adores you.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely,
He
yes.
adores you.
And he
So
really, really, truly is in the details of our lives. And if we look at real tragic hardship and earthquakes and fires, and which are happening right now as we record this, and in Los Angeles, and all of those people, the one thing that tragedy really does is it brings us together. And it's unfortunate that it takes tragedy to bring us together. But that is, we look back at the way that most Americans came together after 9/11 happened, and what a devastating event that was here in the United States. In my lifetime, I have never felt more patriotic and more connected to my fellow Americans. Not to, I'm not trying to make fun of George Bush. I'm not very good at doing impressions. I'll leave that to other people who are really good.
Same.
My fellow Americans, or Richard Nixon. That, yeah, my word. Anyway, let's not wait for a tragedy for us to find connection. And the beautiful thing about the Enneagram is, as I learn other people's number, I get to see and understand them in a new way. One of my dearest friends is an Enneagram 7, the enthusiast, the adventurer. And so everything she does is through the filter of, how can I make this more fun? And if it's not fun, she's out. Even if it's something like a New Year's resolution that she committed to. If she can't find a way to connect the dots and make that fun, peace out, bye.
I have such admiration for people like that. Because I'm like, I said, I do it, I'm going to do it. I don't care.
That's the 3. That's the productivity queen. So I asked ChatGPT to roast me the other day, and one of my friends had done that, and that's actually how I came up with the authenticity myth. Like we talked about, I put it into ChatGPT and I asked, what are speakers not saying on this topic, which is how that was born. But asking ChatGPT to roast me, it said that I'm productive even in my sleep, and that I wake up and I'm resentful that I didn't actually accomplish all of those things, and that I have a list of KPIs for my dog. Like, I mean, it was such a great roast. Yeah, who is asleep right now and not doing anything productive, which is a good thing. He's very sweet.
He's there to remind you, like, no, rest is necessary.
Rest
That's
is
the healing part. That's when our body
the
gets to heal.
part. We all need that. We all absolutely need that. I love it.
But you know what I love about that story is that you used it to be humble. You use ChatGPT to teach you, and also to be humble and lighthearted. And from what I'm understanding, the achievers, at least from me, sometimes it's hard to take a joke. And I've been teaching myself to not be quite so darn serious and take myself so seriously. And so I love that you're like, all right, just roast me. And then we can laugh. We can say, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That is true about me. Okay. I love it. I love it. Well, I want to ask you one more question, because it just feels like this needs to be spoken into for just a minute. You were talking about, we're just getting really, really good at putting on masks.
Mm-hmm.
And will you talk about that just a little bit?
Yes. And I mean, we could talk for hours, and I know that we don't have that much time, but each of us has our own way of believing that we are not enough, and that what do I have to do? Who do I have to be in order to get love from this person, from that person, from, and all the people in our lives. And so we become inauthentic in order to get love in the way that we believe that we need to get love from that person, which, instead of, how can I show up as myself in love and connection with this person, showing up safely in love and connection as themselves. And that is hardwired into our brain, that survival of who do I need to be to get love. And so just without judgment, taking off those layers and recognizing, why did I say that to my boss? Why did I not stand up for myself? Why, when I was being attacked by a colleague, did I not stand my ground and say, wait a minute, that's not actually how it happened? In an effort to flight, to say, I got to get out of here. We need to wrap this conversation up so I can go hide in the bathroom and cry for half an hour. And just recognizing, where have we had those awful moments where we, what I call, mute ourselves. We spent the last 5 years on Zoom. We're connecting via Zoom. I personally love Zoom. But if we don't go down to that lower left-hand corner and unmute ourselves, we can say the most beautiful, kind, true, amazing thing, and no one will ever hear it if we don't unmute ourselves. And so I learned as an adult that in several reasons, things that happened with my stepmother, the family that I grew up with my first marriage to my first husband who had bipolar disorder, I became professional at muting myself, which is a form of putting on a mask. I'm not going to speak up for myself or say what's true in this moment because I need you to love me. And that is a lifelong, probably eternal quest for each of us, to love ourselves so deeply that we can own and recognize our strengths and our weaknesses. Each of the 9 Enneagram types has a strong set of strengths and a little weakness, but it's when we really watch out for those that we can reach it for real change.
I agree. And I love that you said a number of times, no judgment. And I'm famous for saying that. Massive awareness, but zero judgment.
Yes.
Work on our strengths, but be aware of our weaknesses so that we can refine. We can refine and we can tweak and we can change those weaknesses perhaps into more of our strengths, or change our weaknesses into, so we're more compassionate with ourselves and more compassionate with others, because, that trips me up too. And it allows us to love ourselves, to receive more of God's love, and to love our fellow brothers and sisters.
Agreed. There's so many personality assessments out there. And I feel like each of us is a 1,000 piece jigsaw puzzle. And we see the pattern of what it's supposed to look like. I have one right here that you can't see because it's just off camera. It was a really hard puzzle that it took about 8 family members to put together. It's of Sorcerer Mickey. So each of us is this puzzle and we know what it's supposed to look like, but finding out where does this piece fit and where does this piece fit, that's what I love about the 2 approaches to the Enneagram. I love Strengths Finder. I've found value in DISC. I've found value in so many of these things. ProScan, which as a business side of personality and who you are and how you fit into your team, which I'm also certified in because I love it. The real kicker is uploading all of these personality assessments into ChatGPT and asking it, what are my top 5 strengths? And what are my top 5 weaknesses? And oh my actual heck. Wow. I thought, talk about being known and being seen. And I thought, ooh, that's a deep, deep, deep dive into my brain. And it was also like all the awareness, no judgment. Is there truth in this? Yep. Okay. Now I have more awareness, and the more awareness that we have and the less I ignore that once I have it, that's when we can facilitate major change, which is really, really cool.
Yeah. And you do it without any sort of shame.
Well, most of the time I try.
Well, we're all works in progress, but when we can have that awareness and that ownership and then be like, okay, this needs some tweaking. I think that helps us to stop putting on the mask or to buffering up the mask and saying, okay, but I don't need to shame myself about this anymore either. I'm going to own it as part of me, but also it wants to grow, and it wants to be that next level of goodness. It wants light. The shadow side of us wants light.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
Cheryl, this has been amazing. I knew it would be. I knew it would be. And I know people would love you. So how can people find you?
On Instagram, I'm at Cheryl Knows, CHERYLKNOWS. My website is my first and last name, CherylKnowlton.com. It has my actual cell phone number and ways to contact me there. Yep, I learned that from my amazing former business partner. Put your actual cell phone on your website and make yourself available as a speaker. But
nice.
Yes. Yep. So if anyone has thoughts, feelings, emotional outbursts, or other questions about anything, I'm here for it.
And you know what? I know from personal experience, because I do have your cell number as well, she'll respond, and she's always delightful. So you are always delightful. I don't mean to talk about you as if you're not here. So
you're so well. You can say things like that about me if I'm not here, and you are equally delightful, Allyson. Thank you so much for having me today and for allowing me to share some of my personal journey.
And thank you so much for going deep with us right off the bat, and for your candor, and for just your beautiful spirit and reminding us who we truly are. So remember, you are a child of God. Prosperity becomes you, especially when you work with the Lord. We'll see you next time.